evening to you all. I just want to welcome you to this evening's webinar, which is brought to you by the advisory services in the Teagasc Roscommon Longford region. Tonight it's a sheep webinar, and we're going to have two speakers. The format for tonight is we will be on for approximately an hour, so about 5 minutes of an introduction. We'll have two speakers for approximately 20 minutes each, and we'll have a question and answer session approximately 15 minutes or so afterwards. So just about an hour or so we'll be on for this evening. If you're joining us on your mobile phone, just ensure that your mobile phone is well charged. And this webinar will be recorded and it will be available afterwards to view on our YouTube page, Teagasc Roscommon Longford YouTube page, and also on Facebook and Twitter. This webinar is the first of 4 webinars that we're going to be hosting over the months of February and March. And I'm just going to share you a poster here just outlining the various webinars that we're going to have. So it's every second Monday starting from tonight, and we're going to be back again here on the 26th of February, 2 weeks time, looking at I suppose reducing your farm's impact on climate change, and also about applying the correct fertilizer for this spring. On the 11th of March, we're going to be looking at a schemes update for the coming year. And on the 25th of March, we're going to be covering the SCEP requirements and also an update on the Teagasc future beef farms and how they are being run locally. So that's just the number of webinars that are coming up over the months of February and March. And any of you who are registered for this webinar will be receiving emails about reminding you about when these up-and-coming webinars are taking place. So I'm just going to introduce our panel for this evening. And we have Michael Conroy, who's a Drystock Advisor based in the Teagasc office in Roscommon. We also have our second speaker, James Kelly, who again is Drystock Advisor based in Roscommon. And we have Clodagh Bolger, who will be taking charge of the questions and answer session at the end. Clodagh is a Walsh Fellow student based in the Teagasc office in Longford. And myself, I'm hosting it, Sean Doorley, and I'm a Drystock Advisor based in the Longford office. So I'll ask Michael, who's the first speaker, to share his screen and start his presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Sean. Just like to welcome you all. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, that looks good, Michael.
Okay. Just like welcome you all to this webinar, and I suppose I'm going to talk a bit about concentrate sublimation of ewes in late pregnancy. And I suppose a lot of you will say we've heard it all before, but basically this it's good to hear it again, and a few pointers in relation to how you can save, we'll say, money, especially with the price of meal. So I suppose just a few pointers in relation to, we'll say, what are the effects of underfeeding ewes in late pregnancy. And look, at all of you are well aware that lambing ewes is a difficult time and is a stressful time. And the one thing you don't want is creating problems for yourself. So I suppose the idea of, well-fed ewe at lambing time is you're trying to reduce the problems. You're going to encounter plenty of them, but reduce some of them by having a sheep in good condition lambing down. So I suppose, what are the effects of underfeeding in late pregnancy? And James will talk about this in relation to mortality and that, but basically light and weak lambs, and you all know the effect of light and weak lambs, the time it takes up trying to keep them alive. So that's one of the, it's a big time factor in relation to lambing time. The other one would be thin ewes, and look, at thin ewes run into problems too, go off their feed, maybe some of them, not a lot of milk, and thin lambs as well. And I suppose the third one there is poor quality and volume of colostrum. Look, we all know the colostrum is the main factor in keeping lambs alive, both from a nutritional and from a disease point of view. James will go into this a lot more, but basically a thin ewe or underfeeding ewes before lambing, you're going to have poorer quality colostrum, but also a lower volume of it. The third one there, the fourth one there is high lamb and ewe mortality, and another one there is low lactation milk yield. So the ewe doesn't have enough doesn't have enough milk to feed the lambs. They haven't enough condition on them at lambing time. You'll all know those lambs out in the field. Those will be the runty ones with the dry wool on them. And I suppose lighter lambs at weaning. And in relation to this, look at a lamb that's half a kilo heavier at birth is roughly at weaning time is about 1.6 kilos heavier at weaning. And if we take that onto slaughter weight, you're saving yourself about 10 days, to slaughter weight. So look at, I suppose, underfeeding at lambing time, it is a big problem. And if we look at these lambs on the right here, and you can see the first thing you look at is the ewe. Basically, there's no wool hanging off her. She has a good, thick, healthy fleece on her, so you can see that she's in good condition. The other thing here is we look at our two lambs. Well, basically, they have a good cover of fat on them. They're good, strong lambs, and also, they've got a good feed there. And look at, they can withstand a bit of hardship when they go out, cold weather and stuff like that. They're able to withstand it a lot more, if they're in good condition. If the lambs are, plenty of weight and good flesh on them. So I suppose just a small bit in relation to what are the feed requirements of the ewe. And you can see here, we're over here at the dry ewe. And if we just take this as a barley now, basically you're going to be feeding them silage or whatever, when they're dry, or 8 to 10 weeks out from lambing, 0.8 of a kilo of UFL. So it's about 0.8 of a kilo of barley if you just go on an energy requirement. But if you go back up to when the last 2 weeks before lambing, that energy requirement goes up to 1.4 UFLs, or 1.4 kilos of barley. So there's a 60% increase in the energy requirement of the ewe, we'll say from 10 to 12 weeks out of lambing, going up to the last 2 weeks before lambing. If we look at the situation after lambing, look at in a case like that, the energy requirement goes up to 2.5 UFLs, or 2.5 kilos of barley, if you just took it on an energy basis. Now, if we look at the protein as something similar, so what do we need protein for? We need protein for energy, and we need protein for lamb development, but we also need protein for colostrum production, and for the ewes to bag down with good bags of milk. So the protein requirement is nearly a 60% increase. Again, it goes from 130 grams for a dry ewe right up to 215 grams for a ewe pre-lambing in the last 2 weeks before lambing. But you can see here, when you get this massive requirement for milk after lambing, that goes up to maybe 420. So in a situation like this, if you have a ewe lambing down in poor condition, if you take this situation here, she physically can't eat enough in order to feed herself, even if you have her on good grass. So she has to milk off her back. So basically, if the condition isn't there, she can't milk off her back. So you're going to have poor thrive on the lambs. So I'm just going to move on. Look, you've all seen this before. Why is this requirement? This requirement here is 60% of the fetal growth of the lamb in the last 6 weeks. So there's a massive demand for energy and protein in the last 6 weeks before lambing. So if you take out here at D80, the feet is very small, whereas in the last 2 weeks, you get a massive increase in the weight, in the energy requirement of the ewe. So what does that lead on to? So even no matter how good the silage is, you take a situation like this here, this is week 12. You can see the stomach of the ewe here, and you can see the uterus. So basically, there's no pressure on. The fetus is only small. But when you come into the week 20, just before lambing, you can see here a situation where these lambs have grown, but basically the ewe physically can't eat. If you were feeding even good quality silage, she physically can't eat enough. And if you don't feed feed her well before lambing, what's going to happen is she's going to try and compensate by eating roughage, and you're going to get big problems, with prolapse and stuff like that. So I suppose in a situation like this, when we take it just in perspective, if you have a ewe here with two lambs, a 70-kilo ewe, two lambs, say they're around 5.5 kilos each, which is about 11 kilos a lamb, it's about 17 kilos of fluids. So it's nearly 25% of the weight of the ewe, the 70-kilo ewe, is taken up here with lamb weight and also with fluids. If we were to take that to a cow situation, a 700-kilo cow to be like a calf and the fluids at 175 kilos. So you can see there's massive pressure on the sheep here, in the last 2 weeks before lambing. So what's the main feed available? And the first thing I would say is, and I'm just going to go through a few things in relation to silage. And silage is the main feed, we'll say, for in most situations for the ewe before lambing. So I suppose, look, in relation to silage quality, there's a big saving can be made here in relation to feed and meal if you have very, very good quality silage. Most of you are probably on bale silage, and it's the same thing to make a bale at 65 as make a bale at 79. So what are the main factors that affect silage quality? The first thing is date of harvesting. So when we're talking about this, this very, very high quality silage, we're talking about maybe silage 6-7 bales to the acre. We're not talking about these big heavy crops of silage 6-7 bales to the acre. We're talking about cutting it in mid-May. So if you talk about DMD, for every week that you delay harvesting, it reduces DMD by 3.3 units, right? Now, this is the rate of decline is similar for primary growth as for regrowth. The other thing that can affect crops greatly is lodging. Like if you have a very heavy crop and you get it lodged, well, you're out of I suppose you're dependent on the weather, but if a crop lodges, it can reduce by 9 units per week if it lodges. So you have got a massive decrease in quality. So when we talk about, we'll say, when do you cut the silage? If we go over here, if it starts to get stemmy, right? So basically, you're going to get when it starts to head out, you're going to get a reduction in the DMD. If there's a bush of old grass left on the crop over the winter period, you get this dead material. When you cut that, that's going to bring down your DMDs. Now, the other thing I'll talk about is silage fermentation. So poor fermentation reduces the DMD. So what causes poor fermentation is reduced sugars, but also high nitrogen. So it nearly goes hand in hand. If you have high nitrogen, you're going to have reduced sugar levels. So I suppose in relation to these light crops of silage, we're talking about maybe 7-8 bales to the acre. You're talking about maybe putting on maybe 60, 70 units, 70, 80 units of nitrogen. You're not talking about going with your 100 units of nitrogen in a situation like that. Because what happens in a case like that, the nitrogen isn't used up. So what have you to do? You have to wait for it to grow out of it, and then you have reduction in quality. The other thing, I suppose, in relation to making good quality silage is wilting. So you're talking about a rapid wilt of 24 to 36 hours. Now, basically, in work that was done in Athenry in relation to silage quality, if you had with what's called 2 rows of silage on top of one row thrown on top of the other, it took nearly 60 hours to get the same dry matter as the silage that was tedded out on the flat in 24 hours. So basically, if you prolong your wilt, you're going to reduce your DMD by 2 units a day. So what we're talking about here is a quick wilt. You cut your crop, you ted it out, 24 to 36 hours, rake it up and bale it up. Now, I suppose the other are in silage. The other thing in relation to making silage is that the rake is set correctly, that you're not raking the ground, you're raking the grass, because if you're raking the ground, you're going to get soil contamination, and that'll affect the quality of the silage as well. And the final thing there is the chop length. I suppose precision chop silage increases silage intake of sheep, but digestibility is king in relation to, and like this is work that has been done by Dr. Tim Keady in Athenry over several years. So high value silage delivers, and I suppose if you take 100 ewes and you have them in for 10 weeks, we'll say 70, 80 bales of silage, you're talking about 10 acres of silage. It's not an awful lot of silage to make. The other thing I'd say in relation to bales you should consider is maybe put an extra wrap on them to get better that you don't have any spoilage of the bales. And I suppose in relation to the silage, the other thing is that you feed it when you are feeding it, that you don't just you feed it fresh every day and you remove the stale stuff that to get the higher intakes into the sheep. So I suppose just in relation to silage, and we talk about um, I suppose this is your ideal situation. And look at it, it's dependent on weather, but this is your ideal crop of silage. It's leafy, there's no stem, but it's leaf right down to the base. So when we talk about DMDs of silages, you talk your 77 DMD silage. This is your silage that's cut mid-May, cut 6 or 7, grown for 6 or 7 weeks. And I suppose in relation to that, you're looking at a UFL of 0.87, which is very, very high quality. The one note of caution I would add in relation to, people that are making this very good quality silage, they're probably grazing it, lambing in March, grazing up to the end of March, then fertilizing and cutting the middle of May. It's a very short window. I suppose in relation to putting silage on, especially with, we'll say, dribble bars or low emissions, is it going to be there if you rake up? Is it going to be on the sward when you go to rake it up? I'd be inclined, if I was putting out silage, I'd be putting out lightly and a very watery type of a slurry going out on the side on the ground. So when we go down here to your 64 DMD silage, your UFL is 0.71, and good hay would be around the 0.7. And I suppose this year it was an exceptional year. Anyone that cut it early in June or end of May, early June, there was very, very good time there to make very good quality hay. Most years, I would say hay is very, very marginal. So I suppose when we talk about silage quality, and this is just an analysis, and look, you won't know until you get it analysed. You won't know what the quality is like. So in relation to, this is an analysis that was done of silage that was cut in mid-May this year. It was grazed in the springtime of the year and it was cut in mid-May. You can see here the weather was good and the dry matter was 38% dry matter, which is very, very good. The pH 4.58, because the dry matter is high, it's very good as well. So there's high pH. When we talk about, is the nitrogen used up out of the grass? Is the nitrogen there? What I was saying was, if the nitrogen isn't used up, you're going to get high ammonia nitrogen. We're looking at ammonia nitrogens less than 10%, so 7.91%. So that was very, very good quality silage. If there's a lot, you're talking about ash, which is soil contamination, and that less than 8.5%. This was 8%, which was good. And then we go to our DMD. The desirable rate's about 70. This was 76.8 DMD. So it's very, very good quality. It's very, very good quality silage. The ME 11.1, and your crude protein. And look, we'd see poor quality silages with crude protein down around 10, 11%. Here it was roughly 15.6%, which is very, very good. So I suppose in a situation like that, when we go back to the thing here, 77% DMD, the UFL of that silage is around 0.87, which is very, very good. Now, I suppose the other thing just in relation to silages is the higher the higher the DMD of the silage, the more its sheep will eat. Right. In work that was done by Dr. Tim Keady in Athenry, ewes that were fed very, very high quality silage, you're talking about your 79 DMDs, were 6 kilos heavier at lambing. The ewes are 6 kilos heavier, and the lambs are, I think it was around 0.3 or 0.5 of a kilo heavier at lambing time. But I suppose in relation to those type, you get very, very high intakes. If you get this silage at 78 or 79, you'll get intakes of maybe up to 7 kilos of fresh silage, whereas at the medium quality one, you could be down as low as 4. But the problem with, I suppose, with this is when you get in the last 3 weeks before lambing, their intake of this type of silage falls off because physically they can't eat that 7 kilos. So you have to supplement them, you have to supplement them with meal. So just giving you an idea of basically, I suppose, what's the effect of having good quality silage. And the first thing is making it. The second thing is feeding it fresh, and that you don't have a lot of, we'll say, uh, stale silage, that you feed it fresh. The fresher you can feed it, the higher the intakes. If it's precision chop silage, you'll get higher intakes again. Um, in relation to work that was done in Athenry, ewes fed, lambs fed, fed precision chop silage were heavier weights at birth. So I suppose in relation to when we look at the DMD, so we're talking about this very, very good quality silage, um, ewes in good condition, um, you get away with maybe feeding zero 0.1 of a kilo, we'll say 6 to 5 weeks before lean, going to roughly two pound or zero 0.6 of a kilo, zero 0.6 or pound and a half, zero 0.6 of a kilo, in the last 2 weeks before lambing, giving you a total intake of meal of roughly 20 kilos. Whereas we go back to this 65 D&D silage, you're feeding them 10 weeks out, 0.1 of a kilo, going up to 0.6 of a kilo and 0.8, which is giving you a total meal feeding of 35 kilos there over the the gestation period of the ewe. And it's higher again then when we go down lower. The one thing I would say in relation to saving the meal is that basically, you should group your ewes, especially if them house, group them according to lambing dates. Like if you have a lamb that's not ewe that's not lambing for 3 weeks, you're feeding her 0.2 of a kilo of silage or of meal more than she should be feeding, than she should be getting. And look at that's a good bit. That's 4 kilos of meal over 2 weeks. So basically, there's a saving to be made there also. But I suppose the big saving is in the amount of meal you have to feed here in relation to the ewes, and the other thing is grouping them according to when they're going to lamb down. So I suppose there's a big saving there. So and silage is the main factor there, and the big one is to make good quality silage. So I suppose in relation to silage, so you have to feed them, you have to supplement them with meal. So what are you going to supplement them with? And look at it, I suppose in relation to energy is the first thing you've got to feed, and the second thing you've got to feed is protein. So when we talk about protein on a sheep ration, we're talking about soybean should be the main protein source in a sheep ration, because basically ewes need two forms of protein. They need protein that's broken down in the stomach, and that protein is called rumen degradable protein. So it's broken down the stomach, and that's helped the microbes in the stomach. Whereas soybean, it's what's called protein bypass protein. It passes into the small intestine. So basically, you need a fraction of that as well. So soybean is the main source of that. So I suppose in relation to, we'd have a sort of a rule of thumb that you feed 100 grams of soybean meal per lamb. This is roughly a rough sort of a figure. So 100 grams of soybean meal per lamb that's born. So I suppose in relation to uh, what ingredients you'd have in a ration, the first thing is energy. So what's energy? Your cereals are high in energy, your maize, your barley, your oats, and your wheat. The second thing is you need a form of fiber. So what's your fibers? Is your citrus and your beet pulp, right? The other one then is your proteins. Well, what's your protein source? And I say in the main one in the ration should be soybean meal. The other ones here would be distillers' dry grains, peas and beans, and then your molasses would be less than 5%. Now, what other ones you might see coming into rations, and these are medium, they're still good products, and you'll see a good few of them in rations. You'll see your maize gluten, you'll see your soya hulls, which are medium. They're a good protein source. Maize gluten, a good protein source, but a medium energy ration, and a meal. And rapeseed as well, high energy, high protein, but also medium energy. And when we go down here to your low energy problem ones here, you're talking about your palm kernels, your sunflowers, your cottonseed, and your wheat feed. Now, some of these are very, very low in energy. You're looking at your sunflower. maybe have an energy value of 0.7, where your barley and your maize and all are 1. So it's bringing down the energy, but it can bring up the protein. Now it's a poor quality protein, but your protein percentage of sunflower is about 31%. So I would say in relation to rations, that there should be, if you're talking about these type of products, if your molasses is less than 5%, if these are below your molasses, well, then they're not going to have a major effect on the energy content of your ration. So I suppose you're all going out and you're going to buy your ration. And in relation to rations, and this is the label. Now, you won't merchants aren't going to tell you what percentages are in a ration, right? So basically, what you have to go on is you have to look at the label and what's on the label, right? So I just took this label now. It's an old one, but it was one we had on the system. But basically, the first thing you're looking at, well, what's the crude protein, right? So the crude protein of this ration is 19%, which is good, a good crude protein ration. Now you need fiber, because basically you need fiber for we'll say for cheap, especially when you're feeding a good deal of ration. So the fiber content is 9.24%, which is good. Your oil levels are 3.8%. So your oil level, or 3.9, is under 4. Your oil levels are low. What that tells you then is there's a lot of cereal in the ration because your oil levels are low. Your Clodagh, 6.8%, which is low. If you had a lot of, we'll say, average sort of ingredients, I've seen rations up here at 9, 10, 11% ash. There's no energy in ash. It takes energy from the Ewe to break down that ash. So when you look at your ration, the first thing you want to look at, well, what are the main ingredients? Now, the ingredients in these rations are supposed to be in descending order. So the main one is the first one, and then as you go back down along, um, they're in descending order. So the first product we have here is maize, which is very, very high energy. So it's a very, very good quality energy source. The second one here is barley, a very good quality energy source as well as barley. The third one here is we have your soybean meal. So what that's telling me is that the main protein in this ration is soybean. So that means it's a very, very good quality protein that's in the meal. The fourth one here is rapeseed meal. It's a bit lower in energy, a good form of protein as well, as roughly 35% protein. Now we have got down here to our soya hulls. It's medium energy, but it is a good, it is a good fiber source as well. So there's your soya hulls, your wheat distillers, good energy value as well. It has high energy and it's also a good protein source. And so then we have our cane molasses, which we say won't be less than 5, can't be any more than 5%. If it's more than that, you hardly get it out of the bin. It'll be stuck, or especially if it's in a cube, it'll be very, very sticky. So you're looking at these low energy ones. So you have your palm kernel, you have your wheat feed. They're low energy, but they're less than 5%. So I suppose in relation to that is they're not going to have a significant effect on the energy value of the ration. So I suppose in summary, what I would say is it's vitally important that you feed your ewe well before lambing. It's the foundation of not having problems after lambing, or at lambing time and after lambing. It's the foundation of having good weight gain on lambs that that are heavy at birth, but also heavier at weaning. As I said, a half a kilo heavier lamb at birth is equivalent to 1.6 kilos at weaning, is equivalent to roughly finishing 10 days earlier. And I suppose the target is roughly 6 kilo single lamb, 5.5 kilo and of a double, and maybe 4.7 kilo of a triplet lamb. And I suppose in relation to the feeding, it takes the same thing to make a bale of 70 DMD silage. You're talking about maybe 15, 16 euros to cut, bale and wrap, and maybe 2 euros or 3 euros if you put the extra wrap on it. So whether the bale is 65 or the bale is 79, it's going to cost you much the same. It's going to cost you much the same to make it. And I suppose a few things in relation to it is that you don't have a butter grass on it. If you want to make this good quality, you have good quality, you have grass that's well grazed off, you have a fresh growth, and you cut it before it starts to head out. And you know, that it's well fermented. You don't put on, you put on maybe not, you know, 70 units, 70 to 80 units of nitrogen on the crop. You don't want this big heavy crop of silage. And I suppose the final thing there is in relation to meal, don't always go on price. You know, if you have a ewe there getting 35 kilos of meal, um, 20 euros a ton is roughly 70 cents on a ewe. So what I would be saying is a good quality ration, that the main protein source is soybean, and look at that's basically all I have to say. But don't be looking at rations in relation to price. Price isn't everything. You want to look at the ingredients and what's on it. So that's basically all I have to say. So if there's any questions, I will take them at the end. Oh, okay.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for that excellent presentation. So look, you can type in your questions there at the end, at the end of the bottom of the screen, as you can see, and we'll answer all your questions. So as you think of them, you can type them in, and we'll answer them after James's presentation. And we'll answer them all live. We won't be typing any answers to questions or that. So we'll do that all after James's presentation. So James, you can share your screen there if you have your presentation ready. So it's just after 8:30 there, James. So look, we'll say 15 minutes or so. We'll try not to go over time overall. So okay. Yeah, that's looking good, James. Okay.
Great, Sean. Okay, folks, thanks very much for that, Sean. I'll just start here now, 1 second. Can you see that, Sean? Yeah.
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay, I'm just going to give you a run through on lamb mortality. Like Michael said, you've heard it all before, but still it's no harm to hear it again, just on the cusp of lambing like it. It's a refresher as such. It will bring things all together, all to the fore. So just to give a background to lamb mortality, it's the biggest influencer on profitability on the farm. Any mortality in a farm and enterprise is going to have an effect, but these 3 or 4 weeks that you're lambing have a huge effect on the mortality level on a sheep farm. It's going to affect ultimately how many lambs you sell at the end of the year. Approximately 50% of lambs die in the first 24 hours. This is now at lambing like. Most of the death occurs in the first 24 hours when the lambs are the weakest. As you get older with the lamb's mortality reduces as the lamb gets hard over 2 or 3 days, obviously you're going to have less deaths. Target 12%. 12% is a target that you're trying to be under in terms of lamb mortality. Now, this is obviously going to vary from year to year. Most of you that are tuned in here tonight won't forget last March, how it was a desperate year in terms of desperate period of weather. You had cold, you had wind, you had a lot of rainfall in the month of March. It was one of the wettest Marches on history. So that 12% figure is going to vary from year to year, and it's going to be dictated by labor, it's going to be dictated by weather, and it's going to be dictated by the burden of disease on the farm. But all you can do at this stage is try to keep it below 12% and prepare for the year. So where are we today? Today, we're on the 12th of February. Okay, most people are beginning to feed. Most people on this call here around this area are lambing in mid-season flock, lambing in the month of March, lambing in the middle of March. So at the moment today, the ewes are scanned. They're starting to feed them. I put in a scanning rate there of 1.8 lambs per ewe. So that's a fairly well managed lowland Joe flock. It's a flock of fairly mature ewes, all rams okay. Everything else being equal, you're talking 1.8 lambs per ewe being scanned. We're going to lamb them here in March, and in July we're going to wean them, and we're hoping to wean 1.6 lambs per ewe. So if we're scanning 1.8 today and we're weaning 1.6, that's in around 12% mortality from the time you're scanning to the time you're weaning. Now you're going to lose lambs in there for all various different reasons, but this is a target figure, and it is a figure that it's kind of a benchmark figure that any farmer can get easily enough. Every farmer knows what he scans like. You know the amount of the amount of ewes you went to the ram, you know the amount of ewes you scan like, and when you're weaning. So that figure is easy enough got from the time you scan to the time you wean. So year on year, that will give you a benchmark on where you are in terms of lamb mortality. So just to move on to lamb mortality, what are the causes of lamb mortality? There was a study done in Athenry there in 2017-18. It was a farm study. It was a 2-year study done on commercial farms. It looked at the main reasons on lamb mortality, but the main findings of it was what we found was hygiene. Hygiene. 23% of farms were not doing any cleaning, disinfecting at all. So we are going to have a focus on that today. Dichosia is there. 68% of farmers scan, but they don't know their lambing date. So the uptake on scanning was actually quite poor as well. What came out of that trial, the scanning uptake, and farmers scanning, but not really using the information afterwards in terms of group feeding, all that kind of stuff. So that was a trial done. That's the main findings of it there. Hygiene was a key influence on lamb mortality. So we're going to focus a little bit on hygiene as we go on. So how can I reduce my losses this year? I suppose at this point, all you can do is prepare, get ready for it, see how it goes, change things that mightn't have gone that well last year, bring in a few new things. Maybe you might pick up a few tips and tricks this evening that might just help you for the year ahead. So there's 2 focus areas we're looking at here. We're going to look at pre-lambing management. Michael has done a lot there on nutrition, and we're going to look at hygiene at lambing. So by pre-lambing management, this is what I'm going to focus on here, is just coming in very close into lambing. We're looking here for a ewe that's in fairly good condition, body score condition of 3. You know, she's not thin, she's not fat. We're looking for ideally to have 2 lambs in around 5 kilos, and we're looking for her to have adequate colostrum to feed the lambs. So we're looking for a ewe that's in good condition, has the lambs, and is able to bring them away and rear them. Okay, that's the pre-lambing. And the hygiene at lambing, we're going to look at that as well. I think a lot of it is self-explanatory. A lot of it is around the yard in that particular 2 or 3 days when the lamb is there for the first 2 to 3 days. Point I'm going to put in here now at the start is there are 2 focus areas we're going to look at this evening, but it's very important to learn from a lambing. Like I would always say, you'd want a notebook on a farm or a notcher on a farm to be able to identify ewes for culling, be it pre-lambing from a ewe prolapsing, be it from a ewe not being able to have enough milk to feed lambs. You know, there'll be all various different reasons. Not much point in her having 2 big lambs and not enough milk to feed them. Like, so hygiene as well. You know, just a notepad, notch the sheep, very important. It isn't done on a lot of farms, but maybe that's something farmers on this call could look at this evening, notching a few sheep for culling, because once they go out, they go with the lamb, they can be forgot about, and the next time they're noticed is this time next year. So pre-lambing management, as I mentioned, scanned, you're feeding according to litter size. You're basically feeding triplets, you're feeding twins, you're feeding singles, you're feeding 6 to 7 weeks out. You're feeding, if it's a big feed, if you're going up to 1 kilo with triplets, you'd ideally be splitting that feed. You know, you'd be splitting that feed. Feed space at the feeding as well. A large ewe, 2-3 lambs in her, she'll need at least 2 foot at a feeding space at a barrier. She'll need 600 mils, which is 2 foot. If she's inside, she'll need 1.2 meters square. They need a little bit of room to move around. There's no point in packing the shed. Other things there as well, feed management. You know, watch out for the corners in sheds. Don't be having yours packed into the corners when you're feeding them. Cleaning the drinkers as well, ensuring they have clean water. Bedding, keeping the bedding clean inside. Quantity and quality of feed, Michael has that covered there with silage and meals. And vaccines. We have vaccines in there, the 10-in-1 vaccine. Farmers, 3 to 4 weeks before lambing, get it into the ewe. It goes across passive immunity to the lambs. Other issues there on pre-lambing management is lameness. Whether ewes are inside or whether they're outside, you can get ewes lame. And I suppose the key to that is acting on it fairly quick, because a lot of this lameness, it starts off as a scald, it starts off as a sore foot, and it develops into foot rot. So lame ewes, whether they be inside or whether they be outside, very wet conditions outside the last 2 months, inside, you know, with the price of straw and everything, people might be cutting back on it. Beds mightn't be just as dry as they were other years. But it is important to separate them lame sheep straight away, treat them, and give them a bit of preferential treatment, because their body condition score will go down if they're not able to forage. If they're lame, they will naturally get thin from the inability to forage. Also as well, prolapse, twin lamb disease. If feed management is good, you'll keep these cases to a minimum. But I suppose that the key here is to identify these sheep so they're not there again the following year. So the target, as I said there, is a twin lamb, 5 kilos in weight. Twins, triplets and singles being 1 kilo either side of that. So you're talking singles being 6 kilos, triplets being 4 kilos. If you're feeding sheep according to litter size, you will be coming in around this zone, like, and you'll cut down as well on more difficult lambing. Like, if you are feeding according to litter size and you're only feeding singles for 2 weeks pre-lambing, you won't have this huge 8 kilo lamb that's difficult lambing, that's hard on the ewe, hard on the lamb, hard on everybody, hard on the farmer. So that's what you're looking for in terms of birth weights. Adequate colostrum, you're looking for colostrum quality, good quality. It's going to be linked very much to diet, and it's going to be linked to the age of the ewe. If the diet is right, condition is right, the ewe should have colostrum. But also the age of the sheep. As sheep get older, like, they tend to have high birth weights, but colostrum yield goes down. So as the ewe starts getting into 4 and 5 year old, okay, she'll have the lambs, she'll have the birth weight, but will she have the quantity of colostrum to feed them? Like, ideally, you're looking for a litre of colostrum produced in the first 24 hours, and you're looking to be able to give the lamb somewhere in around 50 mils per kg of live weight. If you don't have the colostrum, you're looking to get it off other ewes. You're looking to have a stock of frozen colostrum. Also, you're looking at, if you don't have either of them, you're looking at artificial colostrum, mixing up some of the brands to get it in, or also cow colostrum. So there's a few different options there. You have other ewes lambing in the shed. You might have a stock of frozen colostrum. You'll have the artificial colostrum, and you can use cow colostrum. Again, cow colostrum, you're looking to pool it from a few different cows, and you're looking at 33% extra. It's not as dense as your colostrum. So that is your target That's the first half of what I'm covering this evening. The target there is the birth weights and have adequate colostrum. It all goes down to that management feeding that Michael has covered, feed management just in the period, the 4, 5, 6 weeks before it. So hygiene at lambing, move on to the second aspect of the presentation I'm doing here. Preparation, again, you won't be putting up your pins when the ewes start lambing. Ideally, you'd like to be putting them up 2 to 3 weeks beforehand. In a fairly compact lambing, if you're talking about lambing a bunch of ewes in 21, 25 days, getting them all lambed in a 25-day cycle, you're realistically talking 1 pin for 8 groups of ewes, for 8 ewes. So you're talking 1 pin per 8 ewes. So you're talking, on an average flock of 100 ewes, you're talking somewhere 10, 12 pins. In terms of straw, realistically, it's taking 4 to 5 bales. It's taking 4 to 5 bales per 100 ewes is what it's taken in that period for lambing pins. Lime, ideally, line the pins after each ewe. I know it's very difficult to do, but it will cut down the environmental challenge on the lamb in the shed. It won't let bugs build up. If you can clean out the pins, throw a bit of lime on them, put in fresh straw, you're keeping the environment clean all the time. A dry environment is what you're looking for. These damp environments, you know, straw, more in again, straw in on top of straw, there is a build-up over time. And you'll see that in lambing that scour always kicks in the second half of lambing, purely because the build-up of disease is there. So you try to reduce that build-up. Water, I mentioned it there in pre-lambing for yours in pregnancy. Water, very important, often overlooked. Like, keep drinkers clean, keep an adequate supply of water in front of yours. You know, the yours lost a lot of fluids when she lambs. She's lost a lot of fluids with colostrum, with milking as well. So it's very important just to keep water clean in front of the sheep. Lambing equipment, most of it is here on this slide. We have the softer ropes, the cotton ropes there. We have the iodine solution there in the middle. That's for joint hill. Again, very important. We'll reduce joint hill down 10% iodine. It's all about getting the navel as dried as quick as you can. Long sleeve gloves, stomach tube hygiene. The most important on this slide is sterilization. Ideally, Milton can be used on farm, a 3-bucket system. You'll have a bucket of Milton where you leave that, where you'll have a feeder, stomach feeder, you'll leave it into it, let it chemically disinfect, rinse it once, and off you go again. But ideally, in an ideal sense, after each use, you should be disinfecting a stomach tuber. Because if a lamb gets E. coli, if a lamb gets E. coli, his stomach tube, you're going to spread it very quick. But the key there is to keep sterilization, keep the equipment with Milton, ideally. So feeding of the newborn lamb. Colostrum, you get it in as soon as possible. Once the lamb is born, he has brown fat around his lungs, okay? So a lamb is born, there's a brown fat around the lungs. This will start to break down straight away. That's what gives the lamb the energy to get up and suck the ewe when he is born. It's this brown fat around the lungs. Again, that will only last the lamb, depending on the lamb size. The heavier the lambs, the higher survival rate. But your aim is to get colostrum in as soon as possible. You're aiming to get it in to get this passive immunity straight away. The colostrum, it will act as a laxative. It will get the lamb's insides moving very quick. You're talking, it will give the lamb energy. It will give the lamb immunity against the bugs in the environment. And again, it will avoid hypothermia. When the lamb comes out of the ewe, he's at 40 degrees. You bring him out on a cold night, it could be -3, it could be -3 outside. It's going to be cool like. So colostrum is vital to get it in as quick as possible. We're talking 50 mils per kg of body weight. So for a lamb that's 5 kilos, your standard twin lamb, you're talking 250 mils of colostrum going into the lamb. If the ewe has not got enough colostrum, you will be looking at supplementing the lamb with artificial colostrum from another ewe. But if this colostrum has got in, and it has been shown in trials, if there is enough colostrum got into the lamb, you will have greater survival rates, and you'll avoid hypothermia. All in all, it will lead to a quicker turnout of the lamb within the next day or two. I have joint hill there, navel hill and scour. If the colostrum is put in the navel, all the protocols are being carried out. Assuming your equipment is sterilized, assuming you're getting the colostrum in, assuming the ewe has it, these other issues should take care of themselves. But it is vital in any system to get in the colostrum as soon as possible. Joint hill, I have the navel solution there, the 10% iodine solution, very important. If it's not completed, you'll see lambs getting lame out the field. Sometimes it can be up in the spine, sometimes it can be down on the front leg, it can be on a back leg, and sometimes if it gets ahead, it can be very hard to heal, and the lamb will have it the whole way. So ideally, you are looking at disinfecting every navel with 10% iodine solution straight away after birth. In terms of scour should be dealt with through good hygiene, good environmental hygiene, and colostrum should deal with scour. Again, last year, very difficult year. People weren't able to turn out lambs quick enough. You know, the lambs were in sheds 2 to 3 days longer. There was an environmental build-up. There was issues with scour last year. If scour gets into a shed and it takes hold, mortality will go up. I said that at the start of the presentation. You're looking for a mortality figure below 12%. Okay, you can have the best intentions in the world. If weather is going against you, if a disease burden gets too high, that can go above it. But all you can do your best. Do you know what I mean? And try and follow the protocols in terms of hygiene, disinfecting, getting the colostrum in, etc. And the last slide here I have here, Sean, is the farmer's health. It's a very busy period. It's 4 to 6 weeks. It can be, give or take, 30 to 40 very hard days in terms of lambing. A lot of these diseases in sheep, now we didn't touch on abortion in sheep at all this evening, but sheep, you know, when they're lambing, they can get toxoplasmosis, they can get enzootic abortion as well. All these diseases are transferable to humans. So it's very important when you go into the house just to take off the dirty clothes. Do you know what I mean? Take them off, wash the hands. You know, good general hygiene when you go back into the shed. But definitely, if anybody is pregnant in the house, they should be staying well clear of ewes lambing, because there's always the risk that the ewes are carrying toxoplasmosis or enzootic. They could still be lambing okay, no problem. They might have a load burden of it, but it could be that you just assume it's there. And again, stay clear of them and general hygiene. But the main point I'd make, Sean, there on this presentation is prepare now. Get your pins up, get your stuff ready, and be ready when the ewes start lambing here in the middle of March.
Okay, thank you, James. And you can stop sharing your presentation there. Great, thank you very much, James. And I'll ask Michael there just to start your camera so that we'll get prepared now to answer the questions that have come in. So we'll hand it over to Clodagh Bolger to cover the last section this evening.
Perfect, thanks, Sean. So the first question I'll point to you, Michael, is oats a good enough feed to feed ewes pre-lambing, and if so, how much do I feed?
Well, I suppose just in relation to, like, in relation to oats, it is a very good quality feed. The problem with it is the energy value of it is, you know, is about 10% lower than barley. The other thing, I suppose, in relation to it is we're talking about getting protein into the sheep as well. You know, the protein is about 9.5% protein, so it's lower in protein. I suppose it should be part of a compound ration. Most of you are buying rations now. People will say that basically, you know, that you know, you get hardier lambs, but look, at the big thing was you want a good strong lamb coming out, and look, it isn't as good on the energy. It should be formulated with other ingredients as well, and also a good protein source like soybean.
Perfect. And just on that as well, if there is no soybean in the ration, is there any other way you can improve it?
Well, I suppose usually what the cheaper rations won't have soybean, because soybean is an expensive ingredient to put into a ration. Now, how you can look at, you want to put energy into the sheep, you can top it up with put soybean on the ration. What I was saying is, you know, 100 grams per lamb. So we'd say a ewe bearing twins is 200 grams, maybe not as much as that, but you can supplement with soybean. So basically, what that'll do is, you know, you're supplementing with your undegradable protein.
Perfect, thanks, Michael. And then just back over to you, James. So if I vaccinate my ewes for E. coli, is it effective?
Yeah, some farmers that have had issues over the years with scour will vaccinate with E. coli, Bob. It is effective, again, provided, like, it doesn't give you a license to cut down and go back to poor hygiene or go back to poor colostrum management. It is effective as long as you're getting the colostrum into the ewe, following the guidelines, like keeping equipment sterilized, you know, getting the correct amount of colostrum across. Obviously, there'll be passive immunity going across through the colostrum to the lamb. But in conjunction with colostrum and in conjunction with good hygiene at lambing, yeah, it is effective. It will reduce the cases of scour on these farms that are having difficulty with it.
Perfect. Thanks, James. And just back over to you, Michael, again. So if is hay good enough to feed my ewes pre-lambing? And if I have bad hay on a bad year, what do I do?
Well, I suppose look at in relation to this year was, well, anyone that saved those fabulous weather in the end of May, early June, for saving hay. So basically, look at your hay is a good, it's this year it should be very, very good quality. You're looking at, your silage, it's equivalent to silage of 0.65 or that. So you have to supplement it the same as feeding silage of equivalent. So you're looking at, you have to supplement with meal. But I suppose in relation to hay, I suppose one of the benefits is a drier bed. If you have bad hay, have a bad year, look at it's a disaster, because basically if you have bad hay, it's musty hay. If you're feeding that to sheep, all you're going to get is abortion. You get yours aborting. So I suppose in relation to a situation, if there's bad hay there on the farm, you have to supplement with a lot of meal. And if it's musty hay, basically I wouldn't be feeding it to sheep.
Perfect. Thanks, Michael. James, there's just a few questions there on disinfecting the navel. So should I dip or spray the navel? Which is more effective? And the second question then is, should the navel be disinfected even before the ewe licks the lamb?
Well, I suppose the answer to that, Clodagh, is definitely the coverage. You're looking for ideally coverage. Like dipping can be very good. Again, if you stay dipping, you could carry infection from one lamb to the other. In an ideal world, you'd pour it over. You're looking for 100% coverage. Get as much coverage as you can. 2-3 sprays, it mightn't be sufficient if it's going in on one angle. Just a question there that came in there about should it be done before the ewe licks the lamb? Yeah, definitely. It should be done. The minute the lamb comes out, you should be looking at the navel, spraying it straight away. Spraying it either, as long as coverage is good, as long as the coverage is good enough. The main thing is the coverage, but yeah, definitely before the ewe licks it, yeah, you should be doing it straight away.
Perfect. And just back to you then, Michael. Is molasses any good to feed ewes pre-lambing?
Well, I suppose look at it's an energy source. I suppose where a lot of people are feeding it is out on pasture. Look at I suppose the one thing about it shouldn't be a substitute for meal, but basically it should be we'll say it should be complementary to it. Like if you take molasses, it's very high energy, but the problem with molasses is it's very low in protein, so you have to supplement them with protein. But basically, look at it should be. I wouldn't be substituting completely for meal. You'd have to feed meal with it. It is high energy, but the protein levels on it are very, very low. And I suppose on pasture, that's where we mostly see the molasses being fed.
Perfect. And there's just another question there, Michael, as well. So do you need to feed single ewes? And if so, how much meal?
Well, when we talk about it, look, it depends on the silage, the same, but it's roughly about 0.2 of a kilo less than what you'd be feeding. You're talking about the last 3 to 4 weeks before lambing. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get a good, we'll say, bag of milk on the ewe, especially if you're going to cross foster lambs onto her. So look at, I suppose, if we're talking about 70 DDMD and silage there, 4 weeks out of lambing, you're talking about maybe feeding about 1.3 of a kilo before lambing, and maybe up to 0.4, in the last 2 weeks before lambing. I suppose one thing is that you're trying to get a good supply of colostrum into the ewe as well.
Perfect. And I suppose I'll just take one more question, I suppose, just in terms of time. Those Crystalix buckets, Michael, are they any good for ewes pre-lambing?
What you look at, I suppose you take a 25 kilo bucket. If I have, we'll say 40 ewes there, and you're feeding them maybe 0.8 of a kilo of meal, that's that's 32 kilos of meal you're feeding them. But Crystallic bucket is maybe 30, around 30 kilos. Look at the intake. Look at it's a supplement, but it's not a substitute for meal feeding. That's the way I'd put it. Like it's going to be very hard. Like if you feed sheep in a trough, well, you know at least what they're getting. If you feed the crystal lake, you know how many of them go to. They may not all be going to. It's basically it's just another means of getting some energy into them, but I wouldn't be dependent on them.
Perfect. Thanks, Michael. I might hand it back to you. So, Sean, unless anyone has any other questions.
Yes, thanks very much there, Clodagh, for covering that section. And thanks everybody for who has tuned in and sent in the questions as well. A great presentation there by both James and Michael. This webinar is recorded and will be available on our YouTube channels. A YouTube channel and our social media channels as well. So as you can see, the details are just up here in the corner. There's an email address provided there, and you should get an email address or an email after to provide feedback on this webinar. So as I said at the start, we've got a 4-part series. This is the first part of the 4-part series completed. So every fortnight now for the next 3 fortnights over February, March, we'll have a webinar each night at 8 o'clock. So thanks to all those tuned in, and thanks to James, Michael, and Clodagh. And we'll be talking to you soon. Bye now.
Thanks very much, Sean. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks.
Thank you.